John had once been a man full of dreams and laughter. He lived in a small apartment in a busy city with a warm family and a promising job. But life, unpredictable and harsh, took away everything he loved. A series of personal tragedies, a bitter breakup, a sudden layoff, and mounting debts left him shattered and alone. One day, John found himself with nothing but a tattered blanket, a worn-out wallet, and a heavy heart. The world he once knew seemed to have forgotten him, and the bright colors of his past faded into shades of gray. In the cold nights that followed, John wandered the dimly lit streets, searching for a glimmer of hope amid the harsh urban landscape. Every evening, as the wind howled down empty alleys, his stomach twisted with hunger and his heart ached with loneliness. The kind faces he once took for granted now passed him by without a glance. It was in these moments of despair that John began to believe that he might be destined to live out his days on the unforgiving streets, a silent observer of a world that had moved on. One bitterly cold night, as John huddled near a closed bakery, the smell of freshly baked bread teasing his senses, he sat on a cold concrete step with his thin, worn-out blanket wrapped tightly around him. His eyes, tired and resigned, scanned the dark corners of the block. His stomach grumbled painfully, a constant reminder of the meals he had not had in days. He clutched an empty paper cup in his hand, a remnant of better times, and stared blankly ahead, wondering if this was how his life would end. Forgotten, cold, and alone. Then, amid the stillness of the night, a small sound broke through his desolation. It was a faint, shuffling noise coming from a nearby alley. John's heart skipped a beat as he strained to listen. Was it the wind? No. This sound was different, more deliberate. He slowly rose to his feet, his legs trembling from hunger and the chill. With a cautious step, he moved toward the source of the noise, his eyes trying to adjust to the darkness. As he rounded the corner of a building, he saw a small, trembling figure huddled against a brick wall. In the faint light of a street lamp, John recognized it immediately. A tiny puppy. The little creature's fur was patchy and matted, its ribs clearly visible beneath its thin coat. The puppy shivered in the cold, its big, sad eyes reflecting both hunger and fear. For a moment, time stood still. John knelt down slowly, extending a shaking hand toward the puppy. "Hey there, little one," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the distant hum of the city. The puppy's eyes met his, and in that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. Both were abandoned by the world. Both were starving and desperate for a spark of kindness. Slowly, the puppy inched forward, its cold nose touching John's hand as if testing the warmth of his touch. Without knowing why, John carefully scooped up the fragile creature and tucked it under his thin coat. Despite the bitter cold and his own exhaustion, he felt a warmth in his chest, a small but steady light of hope. He decided, then and there, that he would not let this little life perish. He had nothing to lose, and perhaps in saving this puppy, he might find a reason to save himself. At his modest shelter, a small doorway in a run-down building, John did his best to care for the puppy. He used an old towel to dry the pup's soaked fur and managed to find a can of dog food in a forgotten corner of a nearby shelter. It wasn't much, but it was enough to quiet the puppy's weak whimpers. As the little dog ate, John's mind drifted back to a time when his life was full of promise. He remembered laughter, warm meals shared with family, and the comfort of companionship. In the following days, John took the puppy, whom he named Buddy, with him everywhere. Buddy, despite his frail condition, brought a new energy into John's life. Every morning, as John trudged through the city streets searching for food and shelter, Buddy would follow him, tail wagging and eyes bright with hope. Slowly, a transformation began to occur. The presence of Buddy forced John to interact with others. People who had once ignored him started offering kind words, spare coins, and even small meals. The little acts of kindness that trickled in began to rebuild his fractured spirit. John's days were still hard, and the memories of his past heartbreak still lingered like shadows, but Buddy's unwavering loyalty provided a constant reminder that hope could be found even in the darkest of times. The duo became inseparable. At a soup kitchen one day, a volunteer noticed how Buddy sat quietly by John's side, his eyes full of trust, and asked, "Is that your dog?" John nodded, barely able to speak through the lump in his throat. The volunteer smiled and said, "You two look like you've been through a lot. I hope things get better for you." Those simple words resonated deeply with John, further fueling his desire to change his life. One cold evening, as John and Buddy sat on a park bench sharing a small meal of leftovers, a small girl approached them. Her eyes were wide with curiosity, and she clutched a broken piece of chocolate. "Can I pet your dog?" she asked shyly. John, who had grown protective of Buddy, hesitated only for a moment before nodding gently. As the girl petted Buddy, her mother, who had been watching from a short distance, approached. "He's such a beautiful dog," she said, her voice soft and caring. Before John could reply, the girl offered Buddy a piece of her chocolate, and though John quickly intervened to explain that chocolate wasn't safe for dogs, the small act of kindness left an indelible mark on him. It was as if that moment reaffirmed his belief that kindness was not extinct in the world. As weeks turned into months, John found himself not only surviving, but slowly beginning to thrive. With Buddy by his side, he managed to secure a part-time job at a local community center where he helped clean and organize donations. The steady income wasn't much, but it allowed him to buy food and a few new clothes. More importantly, it reintroduced him to a community that valued him as a person, not as a beggar. His self-worth began to rise, and with it, the possibility of a future he had long believed was lost. Buddy, now a bit stronger and more lively, was a constant source of comfort. Every night as John lay on his threadbare mattress, he would reflect on the strange twist of fate that had led him from heartbreak to hope. The companionship of a little puppy had rekindled a spark within him that he thought was long extinguished. He started to envision a future where he could give back to others, perhaps by working with local shelters or volunteering to help other homeless people. One day, while walking through the city park with Buddy, John met a kind man named Samuel, who was a social worker. Samuel had noticed John's quiet determination and the way Buddy seemed to bring a light into his life. Over time, Samuel became a friend and mentor, guiding John through the process of applying for housing assistance and job training programs. With Samuel's help, John managed to secure a small room in a community shelter, a safe haven that was a far cry from the cold streets he had known for so long. In his new environment, John began to rebuild his life. He continued to work at the community center and even started attending support groups where he met others who had faced similar hardships. Buddy remained his constant companion, a living reminder of the night that had changed everything. The bond between them grew stronger each day, their shared struggles forging an unbreakable connection. As John slowly found his footing, he also discovered a passion for helping others. He began volunteering at the shelter, offering support to those who were just as lost as he once was. His story of heartbreak, survival, and ultimately hope spread throughout the community. People began to see him not as a beggar, but as a symbol of resilience and the transformative power of kindness. One particularly cold winter evening, as John prepared dinner in his small shared kitchen at the shelter, he received a call from Samuel. "John," Samuel said warmly, "I have great news. A local nonprofit is hosting a fundraiser for those who have overcome hardship, and they want you to share your story. They believe your journey can inspire many. John felt a surge of emotions, nervousness, excitement, and a deep sense of responsibility. He agreed, knowing that this was another step toward reclaiming his life. That evening, he sat down with Buddy, his loyal friend resting his head on John's lap, and began writing down his story. Every word was filled with raw honesty, the pain of being forgotten, the struggle to survive, and the miraculous moment when a little puppy named Buddy had chosen him. The fundraiser turned out to be a turning point. When John took the stage and recounted his journey, the audience was moved to tears. His humble, heartfelt words touched everyone, and the support that poured in was overwhelming. Donations, job offers, and even housing opportunities began to appear. People realized that sometimes hope arrives in the most unexpected forms. As the months went by, John transformed his life completely. With a modest income, he eventually saved enough to rent a small apartment. He continued to volunteer, sharing his story at various community events and inspiring others who had lost hope. Buddy, ever faithful, grew into a strong, playful dog, a living testament to the power of love and the healing nature of compassion. John's journey from heartbreak to hope was not without its challenges. There were days when the memories of his lost life weighed heavily on him, and the scars of past disappointments would resurface unexpectedly. But every time he looked into Buddy's eyes, he was reminded of the miracle that had saved him. It was a promise that no one was ever truly alone. One spring morning, as the flowers bloomed and the city awakened with renewed energy, John took a deep breath and walked to the community center. Today was the day he had been waiting for. He was starting a new project aimed at helping other homeless individuals reconnect with their lost sense of purpose. He planned to establish a small program where survivors could share their stories, receive support, and even adopt stray animals that needed loving homes. Standing in front of a room full of people, John spoke with heartfelt sincerity. "I was once forgotten," he began, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. "But a little puppy named Buddy showed me that even in our darkest moments, hope can shine through. Today, I want to share that hope with all of you. Together, we can rebuild our lives and create a community where every soul is valued." The room filled with applause. For the first time, John felt a deep connection with a community that understood his struggles. His journey had come full circle, from a man lost on the streets to one who now helped others find their way. As the day drew to a close, John walked home with Buddy by his side. The city lights twinkled like stars, mirroring the spark of hope that now burned brightly in his heart. He knew the path ahead would still have challenges, but with Buddy's unwavering loyalty and the support of those who cared, he was ready for whatever the future held. In the quiet moments of the night, when he lay awake thinking of the past, John would smile. The memory of that fateful night, the night he was rescued by a puppy, had changed everything. It was a story of sorrow and survival, but more importantly, it was a story of love, hope, and the belief that even the smallest act of kindness can transform a life. John closed his eyes, feeling gratitude for the journey that had taken him from heartbreak to hope. And as the gentle breathing of Buddy filled the silent room, he made a promise to himself to always cherish the bond they shared, to keep spreading kindness, and to ensure that no one in his community would ever feel as alone as he once did.